From our studios this week in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about the new Disney Treasure and then a little bit about the food changes happening at United Parks. I'm a little under the weather this week, so if my voice sounds odd, here we are, because it's that time of year.
Your voice always sounds odd, Philip. It's
That's
okay.
True.
We'll give you we'll give you a bit of grace for your odd sounding voice.
I appreciate that, Scott. Thank you so much.
We're there for you, Philip. We're behind you all the way.
Oh,
usually
goodness.
kicking most of the time, but we're behind you all the way.
Well, with that, I guess, I don't know. I have nothing to say to that. Let's just jump into the first story. So
I'm just going to try to make you talk as much as possible so we can all make fun of your voice.
Right. Well, I have like paragraphs to read. This is fun.
Oh, okay. Here we go. So here's Philip, who's going to read some paragraphs.
Here we go. So I'm reading this article from Theme Park Insider, but every news article or news agency in the industry covered the story this week about the Disney Treasure because it was preview week this past week. So you can find stories everywhere. I generally stick to Theme Park Insider and Attractions Magazine because I know that folks there, do a pretty good job of trying to report, in an unbiased manner. So I'm going to read excerpts from the Theme Park Insider story this week. It said Disney Treasure is the second in its Triton class of ships, followed by the Disney Wish and the inaugural sailings in 2022 for the Disney Wish. The Triton class will welcome its third ship with the debut of the Disney Destiny next year, followed by the yet-to-be-named ship that will sail from Japan by the end of the decade. So structurally, the Disney Treasure is the Wish's twin, but within the same deck plan as the Wish, the Treasure has reinforced some of the theme park components. In the Wish, it has the Star Wars Hyperion Lounge, but it became the Haunted Mansion Parlor on the Treasure. That's the thing I'm most excited about, obviously, and it looks incredible. The Bayou Lounge became the Jungle Cruise-themed Skipper Society. Even the defunct attractions got some love on the Treasure. The Wish's Keg and Compass here in the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea themed Periscope bar. The Treasure has a 7-day voyages, and the Wish had its 3 and 4 day, which of course means that they have a little bit more entertainment on the Treasure to kind of compensate for the extra days. Leading the entertainment in the Walt Disney Theater on Disney Treasure is an all-new musical production, Disney Tale of Moana. Other shows will include the Beauty and the Beast show that debuted on Disney Dream, plus the Disney Seas, the Adventure Characters Review that showed on the Wish. Also, as always, there's a sail away party on the upper deck to kick off the voyage. Okay, so just a few notes here. The Tale of Moana, if you can see some videos on that, it looks excellent, and everyone that attended it seemed to say it was one of the best Disney shows they've ever done. It kind of combined state of the art theatrics, with storytelling, but you can see they're using large scale puppets. They're using stage effects. I mean, this looks like this kind of the scale of maybe like a touring Broadway show or like a Vegas show, kind of like something like Awakening, where there's actors and singing, but there's also puppetry and effects. So that looks incredible. That's so the things I'm hearing from the ship as the best experiences would be that the Tale of Moana, also the bars, like the Haunted Mansion Parlor looks incredible, and of course Haunted Mansion fans are going wild for it, and also the other bar in the area and the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. People love that, but it seems like they're fabricated really well. And yeah, the extra entertainment. So Scott, what do you think?
Well, I know. I mean, I think that this is again what Disney has done so well for so many years, and that is, let's take a basic structure, let's take a template and make it unique for each time they unveil it. So, it's not uncommon for cruise lines to do classes of ships. I mean, anybody who's been on any cruise ship knows that pick a cruise line, and there is a class of ships. So they contract to build 3, 4, 5, 6 ships, all with the same basic deck plan. But what Disney seems to be doing here that I find unique and interesting is, first off, as Philip has mentioned, they're changing out the theming in some of the bars or pubs or clubs, and when we say bar, for those of you who haven't been on a cruise ship, that doesn't necessarily mean just for adults. That is a place on the ship that you can gather, and quite often these pubs, bars, etc., are things that you actually even walk through. In some cases, you have to walk through to get to other parts of the ship. So let's not get too hung up on the fact that they're bars or pubs or whatever, because they are very family friendly on most ships, and certainly on the Disney cruise lines. It's something that families could enjoy together. So by keeping the same basic template or deck plan and changing up the theming, one of the things that's really smart is it encourages people to do multiple cruises or sail on multiple Disney ships. So it's like, oh, we love the ship, but we'd really like to see the Haunted Mansion lounge, or we'd really love to see the Skipper's Club from Jungle Cruise or whatever. So, and the fact that I find it very interesting, the fact that the Star Wars and the Haunted Mansion are not on the same ship, because I would venture to say those are two of the most, I won't even say popular, those are two of the brands that people who are Disney fans are most rabid about, that they want to consume everything they possibly can for those two brands. And the fact that they're on two different ships is such a smart business move in my mind, because it means that they're going to do both ships. Another thing that reinforces this idea is the fact that the Wish was doing 3 and 4 days out of Canaveral, and the Treasure is doing 7 days. So you can get people started on a 3 and 4 day, and families will go, oh, we had so much fun. Let's do a 7 day. And instead of jumping ship, every pun intended, instead of jumping ship to a different brand, they can now do that on the Disney brand. And my guess is they had already seen that happening. And the fact that they do a 4-day cruise on a Disney ship out of Canaveral, and then decide, well, gosh, we want to come back and do a longer ship or a longer cruise with our family, but Disney doesn't offer one. So, how do we make that happen? And now you can do it within the Disney brand. So it makes total sense. One of the things too that I'm glad to hear that they're leaning into is the entertainment. Disney is an entertainment company. I've been on many cruises. I worked for Viking for a couple months. So I've been on a lot of different ships. And one of the things that usually ends up, in my opinion, sort of dragging down the cruise experience is the quality of the main stage entertainment on the ships that I've gone on. Viking actually no longer has main stage song and dance shows. They now focus on individual artists as well as educational programming throughout Europe, so that you can go to the theater, but you find out for example, there's a cooking demonstration or a gaucho demonstration or something about the country that you're either going into or coming out of, which I think is a really cool model. They also target adults. But with Royal Caribbean and Carnival, two of the cruise lines that I've been on the most, the song and dance shows are not to be negative towards the people who put them together, not to be negative towards the cast, but they are far more focused on flash and trash than they are on good storytelling. And one of the things that Disney has always prided itself on is good storytelling. So I'm excited that people are liking it, because I had heard the same thing, Philip. I had heard a lot of really positive things about The Tale of Moana. That seems to be setting a new benchmark for production shows, musical production shows at sea, and even musical production shows for Disney is what I've heard. So we'll see how that continues to play out. I will be completely honest, and maybe it's because of my demographic, but Moana is not the brand that I am most interested in, mainly because the movie didn't resonate with me, but I was well into my senior adulthood when it came out. So I'm glad to see that we're getting some diversity in the heavy hitters, and I'm glad to see that they're continuing to support it, because Moana is everywhere. Moana seems to be the new girl, I guess, for Disney.
Well, I mean, Moana 2 just came out, so I
exactly
think this is planned.
There's part of that
on purpose. I think it was done kind of to reinforce that. You mentioned the entertainment. Also, what's different about this one too is that they have the rotating dining on the Disney cruises, and they have the little themed restaurants, and you kind of rotate through them. And two of the restaurants are the same, but the third one, the Frozen one, was replaced in the Disney Treasure, and it's replaced by the Plaza de Coco, which apparently has like a dinner show that happens while you're eating, and they have the characters from Coco that come out, and they sing while you're eating and around your supper. So I think, again, underscoring what you're saying about the live entertainment, that's, I'm not sure if other cruises do that, but it looks from the videos I've seen here on the Disney Treasure, it seems like a fun show that's almost like a in the round, kind of like, there's like stages around the dining area. And so people are just like walk up on them and sing around, which looks really fun.
Well, and I will say that, when it comes to theming different lounges and bars, that is something every cruise line does.
Yep.
I was on 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I was on the Carnival Mardi Gras. And, even on Carnival cruise ships, and this was after Mardi Gras had been, well, it's named after a ship that was their first ship and is now a gigantic behemoth of a ship. But even their different bars were themed in very, very different ways to again provide a sense of variety. And I think that's something that Disney has done with their rotating dining rooms. I think it's something that they have done with ways to incorporate their brands. I think that, when it comes to multi-level branding, Disney has really always been the precursor. Universal's excellent at it, but I think Disney is still the granddaddy as far as making certain that what you see in the movies and what you see in the theme parks and what you see on the cruise ships and what you see on television specials and what you see on the merchandise is all parallel, is all connected. So it's not anything out of the ordinary, and they just keep reinforcing, even down to the concept of hidden Mickeys, which I'm sure the ship has. I haven't seen any, but I'm sure it does. Even down to hidden Mickeys, to continue to reinforce the Mickey Mouse brand, which, is obviously one of the oldest brands they have in their stable. Yeah. So, when it comes to finding new ways to reinforce the brands, this is just another example of how Disney does it really well.
Yeah. Something, that I thought was interesting about it is I have heard for a while, and of course, I'm not sure. I think this is subjective, but it's just an interesting thing where I've heard for a while from folks that do cruises and that also do parks and they do all these different items, and they're kind of saying that like the cruise experience is still the classic Disney experience. Like the cast members have the time with you to be able to do what traditionally they were able to do, which is to be good cast members, right? Versus the parks, which are a little bit of a hot mess. And, increasingly now that you need to use your phone to plan the entire day. I mean, it's really like the whole thing
makes total sense.
And it's starting to, I think, strain, the park experience is starting to get strained. But so I've heard a lot of people saying that it's almost like they're trying to shift, like on a macro sense, where like the cruise is becoming more of what the park experiences were, which is like funneling people, because I believe it's some people argue it's cheaper if you're going to take your family on to the parks or not. But I think for smaller families, I think it's still more expensive to do the cruise versus the theme park. But it depends on how many kids you have in that whole situation. But it could be cheaper.
And I would say this is really the third shift, because I think the first shift was the parks are the place to experience the best guest service. Then, in my opinion, that guest service shifted to the resorts. Certainly here in Florida.
Yep.
Shifted to all of the many resorts where you really got that special treatment, that special touch. And now it has shifted to the cruise lines. And if you think about it, you have a captive audience in a cruise.
Yep.
You're seeing the same people over and over and over again. So you can actually make as a cast member, as a crew member, you can actually make those relationships, build those relationships. And I'm sure they're encouraging their crew to recognize people and start calling them by name and, all that kind of wonderful, fun stuff. They do that on all cruise lines, or at least all I've been on. But, Disney, like I said, is just known for it. Plus they have the reinforcement of the brands, the various IPs. So,
yeah.
And people may be wondering, why are we talking about a cruise line so much on a show that's supposedly about theme parks and attractions? But theme parks and cruise ships, it's not just because it's Disney. They're coming more and more together. I would not be surprised if in the not too distant future, there isn't an all-inclusive theme park experience. So we may see that very shortly. I mean, just even down to the fact that I mentioned the Mardi Gras. The Mardi Gras has a roller coaster on it. They have rides on them now. They have shows on them now. I mean, like big spectacle shows. They've tested on a couple of cruise lines. They've tested drone shows on a couple of cruise lines. They've tested fireworks. Disney does fireworks. They fire them off of a barge that they float out behind the ship.
Yep.
So there's all kinds of elements that are crossovers, and the Venn diagram is getting more and more overlap between theme park and they've always shared performers. They've always shared live performers. So
Well, yeah, I guess I was just going to finish off with that was kind of my point, is that it's almost like they are, especially with the nod to the IPs that are also like, integrated, like you were mentioning, but they're also IPs that are heavily popular in the park.
Mhm.
So it's almost like they are trying to make it like an alternative theme park experience where, except in this case, you have guaranteed seating, at the restaurants that have, that relate back to the park. It's like, when you're going to the parks, it's like, you're sitting there and you're trying to book your dining reservations and you miss all this. It's like all this stress that you have to put into trying to get the reservations. But here they have these dining experiences with, similar themes, similar theming and shows, but you're guaranteed a spot. And then same thing, you don't have to try and get in a line to try and catch a show.
Mhm.
There's seating for you there. So it's an interesting thing, especially when the themes are so close.
Right.
All these things are stuff you can experience in the parks as well, but now you can experience them here. They did have a drone show for the media. I'm not sure if it's going to be a
Mhm.
permanent drone show, but there was a drone show on this for the media preview. So,
And
yeah, it just
and
seems
the
like they are
reason
trying to make it a microcosm.
And I think that it's interesting now that because part of the reason that they only did 3 and 4 day is they would hope that when people came to Florida, when they came to Canaveral, that they
Hmm.
would spend time at the parks as well. But now with the 7 day, it sounds as though, I mean, it appears as though they're starting to have more confidence in the fact that no, they can just make what they need to make off of guests coming down for the cruises. And perhaps that is because the parks don't, can't really handle a whole lot more based on the way that they're being run. They can't handle a whole lot more, and it gives a different experience for guests like me who don't want to plan out their day on their phone. So,
Yep. Yep. Interesting. Okay. Moving on. Our next story has to do with new food coming to United Parks. So C3 is collaborating with United Parks and Resorts to offer food at some of its 13 venues. C3 owns about 40 quick service concepts, including Crispy Rice, Umami Burger, and Sam's Crispy Chicken. The two companies tested the collaboration in October with a C3 pop-up called Toma during Busch Gardens Howl-O-Scream. Toma will return for Busch Gardens Christmastown event that runs through January 5th. Other C3 brands include Umami Burger and breakfast burrito concept Huevarito will launch at SeaWorld Orlando. SeaWorld San Diego currently launched Huevarito as well. United Parks will operate the brands, with C3 providing product and recipes. So United Parks it sounds like they're operating them and doing I guess, the menu ordering and fulfillment, that kind of thing, but C3 is providing the product and the recipes. Food will be packaged for grab and go. For C3, the deal will help expose its brands to a wider audience. Of course, for the theme parks, it gives them food and it gives them access to different food options. Theme parks are the latest addition to C3's multi-pronged business approach, which also includes brick and mortar restaurants, food halls, a mobile app, the recently acquired Kitchen United, and Next Bite businesses and in-flight meals. So this is interesting because to me, I think overall it's a good move, but it's only a good move because United Parks can't manage their own food. Like it's one of those things where it ideally you would have your food in-house, as we've talked about, because it not only is it a helps you for margin, but allows you to create extended opportunities for different seasonal events and brands and blah 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 blah. But if you can't manage it, or if you want to put your attention on other items, then it is much smarter to bring in something like this that's going to prepare the food and do a partnership than it is to. I mean, I don't know. I keep going back to the Six Flags example, where here at Magic Mountain during one of the food festivals, their food festival items were mostly stuff you could buy from Costco or Sam's, and just kind of like they plated them and put them out there, right? So it's like it depends on your capability, right? And it certainly takes less staff members and less creativity to partner with a brand. So it's like, you're just kind of doing a midway outsourcing to a food brand. And of course, people should recognize it, right? Like Umami Burger is pretty big. So in theory, it's better for the guest because they recognize the food brand and they know what they're going to expect. And it's a level of quality that you can't guarantee at the park. But it's kind of a little bit like a step backwards in a way, to me, but I think it's it's necessary if they know they can't fulfill it. And I almost wish that Six Flags would do the same thing with a larger partnership and roll it out, where, I'm tired of the like chicken fingers you buy at Costco that they just like reheat basically in the kitchens. So, anyway, what do you think, Scott?
I think it's actually the pendulum swinging back. Because you mentioned Six Flags specifically. There was a time at Six Flags Great America, which is the park that I went to when I was a kid, where almost everything in the food space was a franchisee, basically, was a recognized brand. They then took it back in-house, and now they're going back out. This goes on in the theme park industry in so many areas. They'll all of a sudden it looks good on paper that we should take it in-house because we're spending so much money on X, Y, and Z. Then they'll go for a while, and then the guest comments come back that say we need more variety, we need more change up. And in order to do that cost efficiently, you have to partner with, something like C3, which has multiple brands, has multiple products that they can change out quickly, regularly. It's no different, it's no different than basically eating at an airport. You have to recognize that the TGI Fridays, sorry, bad example because they're closing lots of stores. Some of the restaurants, the Chili's that you eat at an airport is not necessarily run by Chili's corporate. In fact, chances are very good it's franchised by a different organization, which runs all the restaurants in that airport. This is the same idea, only in a theme park. And I'm not certain that this hasn't been done. In fact, I'm pretty certain it has been done before in other parks, and the time has come to swing back. I'm excited that it's happening at United Parks and Resorts because the one thing that has always disappointed me, even back in the days that I worked for Busch Gardens, is the food, when it was good, it was excellent, but it wasn't consistent. And that was very difficult for the parks. To your point, Philip, it was very difficult for the parks to manage. And so there was the ability to do it, but not necessarily the, I don't know whether it was financial support or whether it was staffing or training or whatever, to make certain that it was consistent throughout. When you franchise like this, because that's exactly what this is. When you franchise like this, there is a second set of eyes to keep an eye on the quality. You're getting the same product that you could get at any of the C3 concepts. And all the parks have to do is follow the instructions. It's going back to your Costco example. It's like that actually, except the directions aren't coming from a frozen prepackaged retailer; they're coming from an actual restaurant concept. So I think it's a wise move. I mean, I'll even going back 1,000 years when we first started doing Viva la Musica, and we wanted to add different types of Latin food in the Tampa Bay area. You have to be very careful about that because the Latinx community is very particular about what they eat. So what we did is we actually went to a small local chain for empanadas, and we got them to do all the empanadas. We put their name on the booth. Yes, they were sold by our people. They were served up by our people, but all the product and the recipes came from this local empanada group. And they sold I want to say like hotcakes, but no, they sold like empanadas. And then, of course, 2 years after, they said, well, we can do the same thing if we take it in-house, and it will save us money, and more money goes into our pocket.
Yeah.
So it's a pendulum thing that goes back and forth, and it's like, we'll outsource, we'll insource, we'll outsource, we'll insource. And this has happened in theme park for years.
Yep. Well, it's funny you mention that because that's what they had been testing during, because the Toma brand is an empanada brand. So that's what they were actually testing in Tampa at Howl-O-Scream this year before they did this, was that. So it sounds like the same exact thing where they literally were getting the empanadas from this place and then just selling them in the park, and
right.
And
the other thing I want to point out here too, that I think is something that we've said many, many times, or I know I've said many, many times, and I think we've said it on the show as well. When you're doing seasonal festivals like a Howl-O-Scream or a Christmas Town, it is a perfect opportunity to do short run tests for this kind of thing that can eventually be expanded into the parks. again, perfect example. 25 years ago when we first, gosh, I sound old, but 25 years ago when we first started doing Hello Scream, the very first turkey leg was sold in the Busch Gardens Park during Hello Scream. And we did it as a test, and we did it as a test out of necessity because people had a limited time to get through all the haunts, and we wanted them to serve something that was grab and go. And at the time, there was reticence to it. There was concern about it because they didn't want to take away from a full sit-down dinner. And we said, well, guests don't have a chance for a full sit-down dinner. So you either give them something to grab and go, or your popcorn sales go up, and that's not going to help you much either. And to my knowledge, to this day, you can still get turkey legs on a regular basis at a Busch Gardens Park.
Yep.
So it's a great opportunity to test.
I think it's a great opportunity to test. And to be clear, I believe ultimately the best option is for the park to do the food themselves. However, I acknowledge that a lot of attractions, parks and attractions of all sizes, really just can't do that anymore. I mean, we've been talking about the staffing issues since 2020, and they haven't really gotten better, honestly. It's been 4 years and we're still seeing staffing issues. And the thing is, it's harder to staff food and beverage than I think people think if you haven't worked in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went through chef school. I've worked in kitchens. It is not, I would argue, because I've worked in theme park operations as well, I would actually argue that it's harder to staff those food and beverage locations than it is actually to staff like a turnstile type of thing.
That is 100% true.
And I would say it things you don't think about. It's one of those things where you think it's easy, but it's not in reality. And it's hard work. You know, it's demanding work. Even if you're just washing dishes, you know, it's hard work. And it's one of those things where like the difference of the job is like, it's like you should be working constantly, even if you're just cleaning, you know, versus where you're just kind of taking stuff that comes up. So plus it's, you know, it sounds easy to reheat stuff, but if someone's never done it, if this is like a kid who's never done anything like this before, and they're not sure how to check for the proper temperatures, for the safety stuff, and they don't have their serve safe licenses and all that. I mean, it's more complicated than you would think to put this together, you know. And so I actually think if you don't have the staff for it, and I think a lot of parks and attractions right now do not have the staff, like here's what I would say. I would rather you focus your staffing on the entertainment and buy and resell food than try and staff everything and then get everything mediocre.
Well, and let's be honest, the vast majority of smaller parks, not the, we used to say the big three, but not the big four, whatever it is. The vast majority of zoos, aquariums, smaller theme parks outsource their culinary completely. Yep. They use an outside vendor to do absolutely everything. They pay them to be there. They pay them, they go through a process. And they usually get a rev share in most cases. So, you know, I can say 80% of the time, at least 80% of the time, if you're at a zoo or an aquarium and you go and have a meal, the aquarium or the zoo had absolutely nothing to do with that staffing. It was an outsourced company, an outsourced organization. And, you know, even the big boys have done this in the past. What's the orange whip thing at Walt Disney World?
Dole Whip?
Dole Whip is Dole. I mean, let's be honest. It's a sponsored thing. That wasn't created inside Disney's Magic Kitchens. That's an outside sponsorship. So it's not uncommon, and even the large parks have done it. So this seems like it makes total sense to me. I think it's a good business move, and I don't even think it's necessarily that revolutionary. I just think it's another swing of the pendulum to come back, and I just like the fact that they're not leaning into, say, like a Chili's, for example, where they've got one food profile that they can sell in all the parks. This provides variety, and it provides variety that, as we've said, can rotate based on tastes, based on popularity, based on event, all kinds of things. Because, you know, C3 has a lot of different concepts, and I would guess, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess, knowing the San Diego park, I would guess that Huevorito would do really well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, what I like about their choices is that they are grab and go kind of brands, that like
Mhm.
it's stuff that's easy to just like take over. The thing also, things that are easy to transport, that are easy to store, that are easy to keep warm or keep cool or preserve, and then easy to distribute. I mean, that's really
And easy to eat on the run if you choose to, so that you can
exactly.
enjoy the most of the park. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed most of this episode because we're already out of time, and Philip and I are just about to record Green Tagged Unhinged, and we may or may not get political in this
Oh
episode.
yeah. See, we're going to talk about
Hmm.
some people
Hmm.
who don't fact check things.
Anyway, if you are part of the Patreon group that has the opportunity to come and join us for Green Tagged Unhinged, it will check in because I think it's going to be an interesting show. We may end up yelling. I don't know. And if you're not, go to Patreon, find us Green Tagged Unhinged. You'll find us there. And so anyway, thank you guys so much on behalf of Philip and myself. This is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we'll see you next week.